This portal season's gotten crazy, and we might as well start out with what Texas is experiencing. Yeah, already, because it's just getting started. What Texas is experiencing through the portal and their additions and the news coming out of it. So let's just start out with the big elephant in the room, and that is a big human being who went back in the portal after deciding for whatever reason. I don't know what changed the last 72 hours, but I'll let you hit on this one first, Gerald. What do you think is going on with Sadir Mitchell?
I don't know. If I knew, I'd probably write a book or something. I don't know. It's just wild to me. And frankly, like as much talent and as much potential as Sadir Mitchell has, I am so glad to be off the roller coaster. Like I am so very glad to be done with that. There's an old story from NFL writers where when Terrell Owens left the Eagles and went elsewhere, Ron Jaworski gave somebody a high five and said, "Tag you're in." Like that's kind of how it feels with this situation. And I am never a guy who's upset when a guy hits the portal. I'm never a guy who faults a kid for hitting the portal. You get one football career, and when you hang him up, you never put him back on again. So I'm never one to fault a kid for wanting to try to find the right place for their career. I wish it would have worked out with Sadir. He is an incredible talent. He is an incredible, could have been an incredible piece in this defense and had a pretty quick path to playing time. But I think ultimately when things go sour in the relationship with the coaches, it seemed like there was some issues with personalities and attitudes and things like that. And again, sometimes it's hard to repair those things. And so sometimes you need a good break. And there are all sorts of situations in life where two good people try to come together and it just doesn't work out. And I think that's might be the case with Sadir.
Yeah, it's very weird because if it's playing time he wants, he's going to get that next year. There's literally no one standing in the way. Right now, our starter plugged in, our two starters are probably going to be Alex January and Justice Terry. And I don't love that, first off. But, everyone, it's kind of weird, too, because there isn't as much, I haven't at least seen as much outcry nationally as when we lost Sweat and Murphy and replacing them. Like, there was a big bunch of, how is Texas going to replace this? How is Texas going to replace this? And I think inside the fan base, we realized Alfred Collins is still a really good player. Now, is he the most consistent guy? No, but guess what? He has been this year. Vernon Broughton's still a decent player. Well, he's elevated his game. There's literally no one even close to those two guys on this roster. Nobody. I don't know what's going to happen there. We'll talk about a guy we did add from Purdue and Cole Brevard. That does help out a little bit, but you're literally going to need 4 of him. And I don't know if you can find 4 of him. So it's going to be interesting. And I just don't understand it. Like, you're going to get playing time. I'm sure you're being compensated well. I don't understand it. I really don't. It's really trying to get in the mind of a young man that's just had not constant issues, but he's handled this immaturely is the way to put it. I'll say he hasn't handled this the best way.
And, there's somebody like I was a dumb 19-year-old, a dumb 20-year-old. I'm a dumb 37-year-old, 38-year-old. I forget my own age, right? But like at some point, like you've got to have better advisors around. You got to have better people in your ear. And some of these kids just don't do that. But I think we are. I mean, Texas is going to have to do better. Kenny Baker has done a really good job recruiting, and so I'm not worried is not the right word, but I feel like whether it's adding a couple more transfer pieces, whether it's Justice Terry coming in and getting to play early. Justice Terry already a grown man, so we've got a little bit of that going for us. I think Texas is going to be a attractive transfer destination. They've seen guys now multiple years in the last several. I mean, Poona Ford, you've got T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy. Now you're going to look at Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins probably getting drafted as well. So Texas is going to become a valuable and kind of highly desired transfer destination for some of these interior linemen. So I don't think Texas is going to be have a hard time finding guys in the portal. I'm worried about the quality of the guys they can find in the portal. Texas got some great replacement level. They like moneyballed it, I guess, for lack of a better term, in the interior. So are we going to have to do that again this year? Probably. So we'll see how it works out.
Well, and that's the thing too, piggybacking off like the Alfred Collins thing. So we lost Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. I believe T'Vondre Sweat was ranked number 1 according to Pro Football Focus. And then Byron Murphy was 3rd. I was like, okay, we're probably not going to reproduce that. And we didn't, but we got pretty close because guess what? Alfred Collins is ranked number 1 this year at defensive tackle, which was a surprise to me when I saw it a couple weeks ago. He's played phenomenal, and he's going to be a second-round draft pick because of it. Like he had all of the talent. He just never really put it together, the motor, the drive, and the talent all together in one season. He's done that. I'm going to just tell you guys right now, that's not happening this year. We're not going to have the number one Pro Football Focus guy 3 years in a row. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Like, you could have told me last year, hey, I think Alfred Collins can do this. And I'm like, you know what? He has the talent. He can. There's no one currently on the roster in the position to do that. Justice Terry's a little bit too young. Year 2, if you're telling me Justice Terry, fine, I'll believe that, and I could see a path for that. I just don't see who's going to be able to do that next year, and I don't think you're going to be able to do that. But the thing is, too, your edges are going to be very good next year. They're already really good this year. They're going to be even better next year because you're going to have Ethan Burke coming back. You're going to have Colin Simmons. You're going to have Colton Vosick. There's a real chance you have Trey Moore back. That's a really good 4 guys to rotate at the edge position. So that's going to be fine. Your linebackers, I think, are going to get even better there. So it's going to be interesting what they do up the middle. I don't know. We'll talk about, again, Cole Brevard, who got here, and then we also had a visitor there today. But is there anything else you wanted to touch on that, Gerald?
No, I mean, I think it sucks to see Sadir go. I thought he was a guy who, when Texas landed him a couple years back, I was very excited about his potential. And I think, there is losing Bo Davis, I think has a lot of the relational ties that are likely going to go with it. And that, it is what it is. So, no, I mean, hopefully he finds the right place for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any ill will. I think could be a really good player. You saw kind of flashes this year of his talent. He's tremendously talented. We were going one-on-one versus Georgia for this guy. Like, those type of guys, we did that with Justice Terry. That tells you the kind of recruit this guy was. So we'll see what he does. Honestly, it's kind of the Devondre Sweat situation where they're both supremely talented. It was about, could you manage your weight? And we've seen issue with Sadir came in really heavy in the past. He lost a little bit of weight, but not enough, in my opinion, to where you can be a down in, down out player. So he's still going to have to deal with that. But other than that, I don't have really anything negative to say about him. So let's talk about on a couple of the guys that we did land. Jack Baumeister, I don't know how you pronounce the last name. The punter from Utah, really good punter, averaged over 45 yards a punt. He was all Pac-12, all Big 12. What do you like about this addition, Gerald?
I mean, he can actually punt the ball a distance, right? Like that, like, not to put too fine a point on it, but Texas has not had the ability, at least this year, to flip the field. Texas got really spoiled with punters for several years, and then last year landing the top transfer punter. So not having that guy in the barn hurts a bit. And I've been critical of Jeff Banks and the special teams unit on multiple occasions. And so I think adding this level of talent, I think it also shows that we're probably going to see multiple members of the specialist unit probably find their way into the transfer portal sooner rather than later. But I mean, adding this level of talent, can't be mad about it. Cannot have punter is one of those positions where when you don't have to talk about them, things are going really well. And so I'm excited to not have to talk about the punter anymore.
Yeah, basically, if you get average or above average guys, you don't really talk about them. The only time you ever talk about a punter is if they're like tremendous like Michael Dixon or bad like Michael Kern. So that's really the only 2 times you talk about him. I don't need this guy to do anything special. If he comes in and did what he did at Utah, that's really good. Like, he had, I think, 14 or 15 down inside the 20. His longest punt, which I know people were worried about this, the elevation. And I agree with you. I'm a Broncos fan. I see it all the time with them punting and kicking. You're going to get an extra 5 to 10 yards off of those just because of the elevation. But this guy, his longest punt was at UCF, 61 yards. And I believe that's actually below elevation. So this guy's really talented, and I'm excited to have him. Like, it's funny because if you would have said this 2 or 3 years ago, I'm like, it's a punter. But when you have a bad one and you watch him week in and week out, it kind of pisses you off because you realize you're losing about 10 to 15 yards. And with this type of team that Texas has this year, a really good punter would have been phenomenal because this is a really good defensive team who struggles, honestly, moving the ball at certain times on offense. So a punter would have become in tremendously well this year.
I mean, I think back to when Michael Dixon won the MVP of the bowl game, right? That was a game that was won by the defense, right? The defense won that game, and the punt is the first play of a defensive series. If Texas, again, had maybe 5 or 10 fewer yards to cover on an offensive series, because the defense is going to get you a 3 to 6 and out, generally, this defensive unit is. So having 5 or 10 less yards, like that, especially playing in the SEC, the field position battle is huge.
100%. It's a big deal, and this guy, I think, will come in and do a good job. I don't expect him to be Michael Dixon level, but do I think he can be like a Ryan Sandberg type? Yeah, I do think he'd be that, and that'd be plenty good enough.
Sandberg was great.
Yeah, he was really good. Next up, we will talk about one of those interior guys, Cole Brevard. And Texas was on fire, honestly, recruiting over the past couple weeks. I mean, we've signed 3 out of the first 4 guys that visited. This is one of those guys, a guy that came in from Penn State, then went to Purdue. He's pretty productive. He's going to be a nose guard at Texas, most likely. I think he'll take on that Bill Norton role, and I think he'll do it well. He seems to be pretty good. And honestly, if you can stuff the run of the Big Ten, you can do it in the SEC. What do you think about him?
I mean, 6'3", 330, right? Like, is exactly what you want from a space eater. And again, like I said, when we were talking about Sadir transferring out, Texas is going to become one of those places where you can go play a year or 2 of good football and find yourself drafted in the first couple of rounds of the NFL draft. Texas has now done it multiple times with defensive tackles. And so I'm glad to see that reputation is holding out. Texas needs to do it about 3 or 4 more times for me to feel good about next year. But, getting him on campus and not letting him leave is the right move. I wish he could suit up potentially for the college football playoff. We'll see how that works out. But, I'm glad to have him. Big body, big space eater. I love a good fat behind defensive tackle. Like, that's a compliment, right? Like, and that's your linebacker's best friend. When you have Anthony Hill, who can play sideline to sideline, his best friend is a defensive tackle that can occupy 2 men in 1 gap, right? Grab a center, grab a guard, and let Anthony Hill make some athletic plays. So I'm excited to see it. He's going to be a good addition, and I think Texas is better for it. So again, do it a couple more times, and then I'll feel really good about next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a good player. Like I said, I think he'll take on that Bill Norton role. I think we need one more guy like him, and then you need another 2 guys like an Alfred Collins, more get up the field pass rusher guy. If you get that, then I think they'll be fine on the inside. But this is a good addition. Again, you're getting a guy that honestly isn't from like a North Texas or some guy from another program that kind of failed at that program. This guy was a quality player at Purdue that was just honestly on a really bad football team. And I think he'll be a pretty good player for Texas. And we have the right coach. I think Kenny Baker's a really good football coach, and he's done a really good job of recruiting as well.
I owe Kenny Baker like 1,000 apologies. I was not convinced on Kenny Baker when they hired him. And the guy has been an incredible, he's been a really great position coach, and he's landed elite talent. So I owe Kenny Baker, I don't know, whatever he wants, a bundt cake or something. I owe him an apology for sure.
Yeah, I know. We're as a fan base, we're big Bo Davis stands, but let's be honest here. I actually think Kenny Baker's done a better job at recruiting and done a pretty damn good job at developing. He's definitely a better recruiter than Bo Davis.
As it stands right now, yeah, proof is in the pudding, and skins are on the wall, man.
Yeah. So the next guy that did commit, Brad Spence. This is the guy I'm most excited for. This is a really quality 3rd linebacker. You're going to have Anthony Hill, Leonardo Lafau, and then you have Brad Spence, who honestly, he'll play all over, guys. I expect him to play a little bit of that Trey Moore role, where sometimes he'll have his hand into the dirt, come off the edge. He'll drop back in passing situations sometimes. And then I think you can actually slide him into the inside as well. I don't think he'll have to do that much because you have Anthony Hill and Leonardo Lafau in there. But he could do it if he needs to. So this is a really good 3rd linebacker and a guy you're getting off of a quality SEC team, a bowl-eligible SEC team. You took one of their linebackers, and he was playing his best football down the stretch, Gerald.
Yeah, I mean, Texas needed a linebacker or 2, I think, and adding quality depth is the right way to say it, right? Brad Spence is a guy who can come in, who can give you 15 or 20 snaps a game and really, really be effective. And like you said, Texas really appreciates multiple position guys. He's a guy who's got a decent first step. So if you're trying to blitz somebody off the edge, he's a guy you can put in that package. He's a guy who could probably play a little bit in coverage, where Texas has struggled a bit in coverage this year from the linebacker position. I think we got really spoiled with Jalen Ford being one of the best cover linebackers we've seen in a very long time. So I think he's a guy who gives you a lot of options. That's the kind of player that Pete Kwiatkowski loves. Give Pete Kwiatkowski a Swiss Army knife, and he's going to do a lot of fun things. So I think Brad Spence is a guy who will come in and see the field early and often. Obviously, he comes in and tries to boost his draft stock, so I think he's going to come in. And, Texas has gambled on some guys in the portal, and we've seen it. Last year, Kendrick Blackshire came in from an SEC program, didn't work out, transferred out after spring ball. So Texas is not afraid to take some of these big swings on guys that could be really key pieces, and I think Brad Spence is one of those.
Yeah, and I think this guy has more upside than a Kendrick Blackshire, who mostly, at Alabama, he was mostly rotational. So at most, he played like 5 to 7 snaps of real defense a game, but he's mostly a guy on special teams. Now, this guy can actually play, and I'm excited to watch him play. And again, we're honestly, other than the defensive tackle, we're pretty deep. Like linebacker, I'm not worried about now. Cornerback, I'm not really worried about now, even though we'll get into possible guys there because there is some news about Takario Davis from Arizona, which, hey, I'm not going to turn that guy down because that guy's a freak at cornerback. So if he wants to come, he can come. But we're going to be good at safety. We'll be good at corner. We're good at edges. It's really defensive tackles. And if they get that filled, I think this defense can be – I'm not going to say just as good as this year, but I think it can be somewhere between this year and last year's defense, in my opinion. And I think the offense will take a step forward as well.
I mean, it's hard to say they'll be good as this year's defense. I think they're the number one FEI and S&P Plus defense. Like, it's hard to expect that multiple years in a row, but I think you're right. I think the drop-off will not be as massive as folks are expecting.
No.